Hello all and welcome to our channel Ashnik. I am Rituraj, a marketing manager working in the open source industry. Today in this video we will focus and discuss all about OSPOs. We'll explain about how OSPOs are gaining tremendous momentum in the IT industry, how they can be easily set up by you, and finally about how OSPOs will be beneficial for your business. At this point, you must be surely thinking, what is an OSPO? Well, they are nothing but short for Open Source Program Office, the centralized entity managing open source initiatives, guidelines within your business. In fact, in a recently published survey, 49% of participants stated that an OSPO will be implemented in their organization for a structured adoption of open source in 2023-24. We are delighted to have with us Mr. Harish Pillay, who is a Deputy Chairman of the Singapore IT Standards Committee and a seasoned practitioner of OSPO, and Mr. Sachin Dabir, the founder CEO of Ashnik. Both of them will provide detailed insights on the impact of OSPO in the open source ecosystem and its enterprises. Watch this video right till the end to understand how you can easily get started on your OSPO journey for success.
Great to have you, Harish. And this is a favorite topic, a passionate topic that you and me have been talking about, of open source program office. I have been also talking to a lot of customers, but you are the one who actually set it up for Red Hat when you were there. And so you have the actual execution experience. Also, you have been with the customers and been advising them how to go about it and why do they need it. So how has been your experience in general about this open source program office?
OSPOs, the idea behind it is, given the fact that a lot of organizations are deploying significant amount of open source technologies, either by taking it from the outside and then deploying it, they are doing it internally, developing for their own purposes, and then trying to figure out what do you do with it in terms of, do you publish it internally, do you now contribute back upstream, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole set of things that needs to be thought through. And so the open source program office idea is to help give guidance to organizations as to what they should be doing. And every organization will be slightly different from the next one because their starting point is going to be different. Some of the stuff will overlap across the board, doesn't matter which organization you have, but there will be some differences. For example, some organizations, even as an OSPO perspective, may not even be considering or looking at anything from a license perspective, in the sense that because they may not necessarily be making the code available, the products or whatever they create necessarily available to a third party. It may be just purely for internal consumption. Whereas other OSPOs may need to be concerned and understand the variations or the different types of licenses from an open source license perspective. Is it a MIT license, a BSD license, an Apache license, a GPL license, and what are the obligations for each one of those things? And so this becomes something that they need to understand. They don't have to be lawyers per se, but it helps that they have the background in some sense. Plus, they will also be the interface between the organization and their legal team within the organization, so that the legal team will appreciate and understand what they are being told to do. And when the developers do what they need to do to build the code, to test the code, to release the code, that they are in compliance across the board. So at the end of the day, from all the conversations I've had with organizations, they look to Red Hat as an example for the leadership portion in terms of how do you handle accountability across the board? How do you handle the fact that the code came from somewhere and now the code is either being consumed internally or now it's being sent out with changes, improvements, modifications. That entire component needs to be educated, needs to be taught, and needs to be tracked. So you can't do any of these things without somebody having that wherewithal to understand what goes on.
So from what you are saying, I see there are three types of organizations who actually need this understanding. Because these needs are different. One is the organization who is purely adopting open source technologies. So their considerations are different from OSPO point of view. The second organizations are who are consuming open source libraries, open source projects, and packing them up along with their products, shipping them out. so they have a very different needs of understanding of open source.
Yeah.
And the third is organizations who are engineering organizations who are developing some of their projects and they want to make it open source. So they would have different questions. So is that understanding correct? These are the three categories.
There will be an overlap. At the same time, these are the three broad categories.
Correct.
Yeah.
Especially what I saw in recent times, with so much now discussions happening about open source licensing per se, and we have latest cases also Hugging Face and so many going all the way in 3 years back when some of the organizations like MongoDB, Elastic and all, they changed their licenses. So there is a need for education.
That's right.
But how do you see organizations, especially enterprises, what is their readiness to absorb these nuances?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what is the purpose of the organization. They don't really, a lot of them don't really care about all these details. As long as they can achieve their business goals, they can achieve and they're profitable, they generally don't really care. It's just like accounting requirements. As long as you can file the papers and there's nothing found out, they're happy, they just move on, right? Now, similarly for this, so why do we need to educate them? Because there are obligations that are hidden inside whatever that is being built. If you are not aware of these obligations, then you're opening yourself up to a problem. At some point in the future, it may or may not happen. So the question at the end of the day is, if you have people and the necessary empowerment in terms of they are empowered to do so, to verify that this is actually indeed what you claim it to be. That means I took code that was, say, GPL, and I've now incorporated that GPL code into my product by also modifying the code, not just taking it as a library and then incorporating it. So when you now create this new product and you ship it out, what are your obligations? What do you need to release? So if you don't understand that, then we have a problem. And it can come and bite you at some point, which is probably not a good thing to happen. So the question then comes back to is, how much understanding do I need to have as an organization? This is a perennial problem. We have to continuously educate people. You need to.
But a whole lot of organizations who are just consuming open source technologies. And as you said in the beginning, sometimes they say, I don't care, it doesn't matter to me. Is it really true? Apparently, though it might be correct, but I feel there are many things that customers are missing by not having this correct understanding. But I want to hear your perspective first.
I think that is really the bigger issue there, because you may be getting a piece of code that you've taken from the open source community through a vendor perhaps, or you directly through your developers saying, hey, we want to use this particular library. Great, use it. Now, what kind of processes do you have in-house, even if you're just purely using internal purposes?
Yes.
What kind of processes do you have in-house to make sure that if the developer took it directly from GitHub or GitLab or wherever, that there is a process of updating it? If there is a CVE that is being announced, that there is a process to update it, to secure it, to do whatever necessary to be done. If you do not have that as a process, then we have a problem. And again, it goes back to encouraging organizations to contribute back upstream, to find ways to fund these guys who are doing the work that needs to be done, whether it's coming through a partner or going directly to the developer, some way of funding it. There are organizations that have been set up to help fund this, so that the question of who is paying for all of these things is sort of partially answered. But again, it goes back to, you have to do the needful, otherwise you are opening yourself up to all kinds of problems.
Absolutely. And some of the organizations that I saw, they take a blanket approach. They send out a blanket advisory to their teams not to use open source, just because they don't want to invest in creating that knowledge. It's not anything wrong with the open source, but just, so my question to all of these organizations is, fine, you want to do that, but then you are missing out on fast developments, good code and good work that is happening. And why do you want to deprive your engineering team or your teams by not using that?
That is a real problem. I mean, the organizations that go down that path, they it's very hard to peel apart their thinking process because they come from certain assumptions that are made, whether it's right or wrong. So the assumptions sometimes that are made is, oh, because we don't know the provenance of this code, therefore I don't want to touch it. Fair enough. But the same question or same sentiment could be applied to the proprietary software,
course, yes.
right? So, but the thing is, when you question or ask these organizations as to why you take that particular stand, I can tell you none of them know why.
It goes basically just to the extent that just because I don't know, I don't want to trust.
That's right. It's
not
a fear
correct.
of the unknown
Correct.
in some sense, yeah.
So I'm ready to trust the black box.
Yeah.
Then,
Yeah.
then something I can see.
Yeah.
But then what you see, you have to take little effort.
You have to put the effort into it. Exactly.
Knowing it, knowing the
understanding,
licenses.
yeah.
And also, one of the things that I am seeing is organizations are missing out on fast-paced development that they need to do. Everybody keeps saying, "Oh, we need to be faster in our product, our projects."
Yeah.
But then you are not using open source that is available. So many libraries are
Yeah.
available. So
Yeah.
many projects are available. You can make use of them and be faster.
It's a combination of NIH, not invented here,
Yeah.
syndrome, as well as, I don't really want to do this. So again, it goes, and there's another way of looking at it, right? Why do you, not do every single thing you need to do in an organization yourself? Right? Why didn't you do that? Because then you know exactly what was done. But you choose to take things from different places. There's a certain element of trust. There's a certain element of provenance there. So these are some of the reasons why the organizations like OpenSSF, Open Software Security Framework, was set up to give you the provenance of the particular source, line of code that you are receiving.